Hello everybody and welcome to our live question and answer session with both me, your course advisor Hazel Craven, and Dr Suzanne Johnson as well. Thanks for joining us today, Suze. So we are running this session as a live Q&A for everybody who is watching to be able to submit their questions if you've got a question about the course or anything that you want to check with us about the programme. And we'll also be answering some of the frequently asked questions that we do get about the course too. So for anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Hazel and I'm the course advisor for this programme. I'm basically here to offer support and guidance for anyone who's considering studying the course, right through from that first point where you're first thinking about whether the course is right for you, and right through until you begin studying with us. So today's session is part of us providing further information for you. And at the end of the session too, I will put up my contact details on a slide if there's anything you want to follow up privately as well. So first of all, I guess I'm going to hand over to you, Suze, and just ask you to introduce yourself to everyone watching today.
Sure. So hi, Hazel, and hello to everybody else on the potential global campus and potential learners for our new programme. I'm Suzanne Johnson. I am a lecturer within the Division of Cancer Sciences at the University of Manchester. I'm also a social responsibility lead for our division. I have almost 20 years of research into different types of cancers using a whole variety of different approaches, techniques and technologies. And I would say that I've always been particularly interested in two specific aspects of cancer. Firstly, it's all about the genetic transformation of a normal cell into a tumour cell, how they can then go on to hijack their natural microenvironment, to continue to communicate with each other and with normal cells around them and continue to evolve. And the second really interesting aspect for me has been the implication of how these biological processes can then impact on clinical management. So I completed my PhD with two supervisors, one of which had a basic science background and one was a clinical pathologist. So I guess that's why my interest is in these two areas. And I suppose I was always really fascinated by how these two different areas and these two different disciplines are, sort of come together, and they can both complement and also contradict each other at times. So in terms of my research career, I continued in translational cancer research, which was largely led by clinical insight. But it really challenged me as a scientist to start to understand and unpick the sort of biological explanations, to understand what was happening in the clinic, what was happening in the patients, and see if we could then use that knowledge to harness and develop new diagnostic tests, for example, or enable monitoring of treatment in patients that would ultimately lead to a better outcome for those patients. Yeah, I would say the interface between science and medicine is an area of oncology which would really benefit from greater exploration. The partnership between the sort of discovery research and the clinical advancement, it would be much more efficient with a bit more explanation, and that really is where transformative oncology sits.
That's brilliant, thanks, Suze. And I guess that actually probably brings us on quite nicely to the next question that I've got for you. But just to give a little bit of background and a little bit of context to everyone who's watching today or watching this back in the future as well, is that we have for this course, it is a relatively new course for the University of Manchester. So the first intake for it is September 2022, and that will be the first cohort of students going through and learning the programme. I was just wondering if you'd tell us a little bit more about sort of how the course came about and what you're really excited about within the course.
Sure. So I would say that this programme really brings together sort of the 21st century biological and biochemical understanding of a whole range of different topics actually that are pertinent for oncology, where cutting edge research and new technologies are being used in that sort of discovery area, this discovery science area, with the sort of rigor of scientific logic, if you like, and then it brings that together with the more contextual sort of evidence-based sort of discipline, which is medicine, which is then of course you sort of skillfully apply some of this biological understanding to the sort of help and the healthcare of patients, and it's the art of caring. So it's the marriage of those two disciplines really, and it's an area in oncology. If we better understand it, it means that, you know, we'll be able to design and advance new treatments coming through all the time in all of these different areas. So the programme really focuses on why it's important to understand some of the biological heterogeneity which underpins tumours, and how that understanding can lead to discoveries in terms of clinical interventions, or even just, you know, the decision making of the patient.
Yeah, no, and that's absolutely brilliant, Susan. Thanks very much for explaining that as well. So one of the things that I think is absolutely brilliant about this course is the fact that we do have a variety of different study options. So we do have a master's route, we have a postgraduate diploma, and we also have a postgraduate certificate routes for this programme. So I was just thinking maybe it'd be worth us discussing it in a little bit more detail about what the difference is between those three different routes, and how it can help people decide basically which option is going to be right for them.
Sure. So the other aspect of this programme which sets it apart from other sort of cancer focused postgraduate programmes is the delivery. So it's part-time, it's delivered entirely online. But the structure is done in such a way, so each unit is delivered over a period of 8 weeks, and we have a suggested sort of notional timetable, which is perhaps between 15 and 18 hours of study a week, and each unit is worth 15 credits. So you can build towards a postgraduate certificate by taking 4 of those units, and that will take you a year. You can build towards a postgraduate diploma by taking 8 units. That will take you the 2 years. And if you then want to progress onto a master's degree, you can do that either by a clinical-based placement, a research-based placement, or indeed by taking, you know, continuing on the sort of online learning route by using our research skills and practice module. So there's plenty of flexibility.
Yeah, no, and that's absolutely one of the things that I think is brilliant. And with it being online as well, the fact it is open to people who are across the world, meaning that, you know, a lot of people who are already working in cancer research, cancer care, that it's difficult to pause what you're doing right now and take a career break to study as well. So that's again one of the reasons why it is part-time and it is online. And it does also mean that you get this really diverse range of people from across the world as well, and you can all kind of learn from each other very much as you're learning from Suze and the teaching team. You can all learn from each other too, and hear about the different challenges and the different activities that are taking place in different pockets of the world. So one of the questions that I know we do get asked a lot is about how the teaching really works and how that accommodates for that sort of global audience. Are you able to talk a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, sure. So the interaction with the course materials. So as I say, each unit is delivered over a period of 8 weeks. The course material is structured in a way which helps our learners to pace themselves. So it's done on a week-by-week basis. Each unit is split down into 3 topics, and each of those 3 topics takes 2 weeks to cover. So it really enables people to make sure that they're keeping up with the pace, but at the same time there's flexibility in there. And we've built in an extra 2 weeks at the end for assignments, for reflection, for you know, additional revision, or any other catch-up or discussions, etc., or revisiting that they might want to do. The teaching is delivered in a variety of different ways. This isn't traditional didactic teaching. We're not just going to talk hour-long lectures at people and just impart our knowledge. This is more about, so there will be some written content, there will be lots of sort of short, focused presentations around a very specific topic or area, and those will be delivered by the unit lead. And then there are also integrated with lots of videos of maybe clinical experts or scientific experts, which will talk around a very specific area. So it's what I really like about the programme is that we can really hear those voices and hear that experience. And, you know, within clinical observation, sometimes it might take 5 or 10 years for that scientific discovery to translate into something which is clinically relevant. So hearing people's experiences who've been through that pipeline is really quite valuable and very inspiring. So I've actually really enjoyed interacting with all my clinical colleagues and putting the content together for this programme. We also do quite a lot of directed sort of independent reading, and it's focused on very specific tasks. So we might set a question which really is aimed to sort of drive curiosity and our learners to go and seek something out for themselves. And this, by doing that, we're developing research skills, and we're developing the ability to sort of critically appraise some literature or some piece of material. So all of those additional skills are being inbuilt into the method of teaching. The other method that we use is sort of interactive, sort of active-based learning. So there might be some drag and drop, or there might, there's some different formats that we use with the learning where there might be some definitions that you need to go and do a bit more research on and explore or match up, and it brings that much more holistic understanding.
Yeah, no, and that's actually really detailed and really helpful, I think, for everyone to hear, and hopefully sort of be able to picture how it's going to work for them as well. I know something that we get asked quite a lot is there going to be anything live that people have to attend at a specific time? And bearing in mind sort of the global audience, is there anything to kind of help with that if people can't attend for whatever reason?
Yeah, so we talk about the delivery as being asynchronous. That means it's an awful lot of recorded content which is delivered at a particular set time, but not delivered at a particular set time of day. So therefore people in different time zones can access it at a time which is convenient for themselves. We also expect that a lot of people joining the programme might already be working, or they might have family commitments or other care responsibilities, which means that they need to pick up some of that learning in their own time. We do have the option of having some very detailed interactions. It kind of depends on the cohort until we know which time zone everyone's in. We can't really plan entirely, but the way that we encourage people to interact is through discussion boards, is through email, is through contacting either the unit leads or myself, the programme director, or anybody who needs any help or support. On the technical side, there's always somebody there in the background who's there and able to help and to assist. The other thing, and you touched on this earlier, and this is the thing that I'm probably most excited about in terms of meeting our learners, is building what we call a community of practice. So those learners, so within each of the units, we're setting little tasks, and we want them to go away and do, a very focused piece of research, and then come back and discuss it with their peers. And by doing that sort of discussion, and by preparing those short summaries and sharing that knowledge, you're also learning from what's going on elsewhere in the world and in other job roles or in other approaches, and learning from everybody's experiences as well. So although it's not face to face, it still feels like there's human contact, and there's still people around to support all the time.
Yeah, and that's a really good point that you've touched on with the student support, and I'd actually just like to kind of drill down into a little bit more detail about that for people, because I know it's something that people do ask a lot, really, is yes, you're studying online, which means that you're studying wherever you're based in the world, but very much we are very keen and we work very hard to make sure it doesn't feel like you're studying alone. So like you've just said, Suze, it's very much that people can interact through the discussion boards. You will have a University of Manchester email address, which means you can easily contact Suze, you can easily contact your unit leads. We also, for any non-academic matters, do have a really wide range of student support available too. And so you will have a study advisor who's your first point of contact for any non-academic inquiries. So there's very much that support there. If you need it, they can help with things like study plans. If you are struggling with just having a bit of sort of technical difficulty getting into anything, they're always there to help and support with that too. And in addition, we do have a really sort of wide range of online resources through the University of Manchester Library. Everything that Suze and all of the academic leads will be putting on things like the reading lists are going to be accessible online for anyone who's learning the course. And there's also a platform called My Learning Essentials as well. So if you've had a bit of a gap in your study and you're worried about bringing those study skills back up, there are resources there, and there are things available through our library to help you to develop those study skills. And the library also offers support to students, and you're able to get in contact with the library really easily. At any time of day, you can send a message to them and get further support if there's something you're struggling with the library access as well. It's something a lot of people don't necessarily realise is there, and I do think it's something that's really, really important to highlight to everyone. So kind of moving on, before I move on to the next question, I can see that we've got quite a lot of people sat watching. It's just a reminder to not be shy, and if you do want to submit any live questions, then please do. You can use the chat, or you can use the question and answer function. Susan and I are both monitoring both of those. So please don't be shy about getting in contact. Even if you just want to say hello in the chat, like that's absolutely fine as well. We really do like the encouragement. So please get in contact and join in with today's session. If you're happy just listening, then that's also absolutely fine too. But we really want you to be able to make the most out of today's session. So the next question kind of relates to careers, Suze, and it's something that is a hot topic, and a lot of people are really keen to know is, how is this course going to help people progress their careers?
So I think this will appeal to a very broad number of job roles. So we talk about allied healthcare professionals, we talk about people who have those job roles that aren't necessarily strictly in medicine or strictly in science, but they might be, they have that scientific background, and we could have a whole cohort of students, some of whom might be radiographers, some of them might be nutritionists or physiotherapists, etc. In terms of where transformative oncology can take you, there's three basic areas that I would say. One is in research. So it might take you and enable you and inspire you to continue in research and maybe go on to do an academic PhD, or you might want to go into a biotechnology company, or sort of contract research organisation, or indeed a pharmaceutical industry. If you've got that background of skills. Healthcare is another option. So this, in that region, there's either the sort of patient-facing healthcare, so hospitals, private clinics, or community-based clinics. Or there's the more sort of service side of healthcare. So that really talks about sort of diagnostics and screening, maybe data analyst, or maybe a centre manager. If you've got management skills in your portfolio, and now you've got the sort of the oncology experience, maybe there's an opportunity there for a management role. And the third, which is often overlooked actually, is more the administrative roles. And these are considered to be support roles, but they're absolutely vital. So, these are things like science communication, or medical charities, or research charities, or funders, or science policy writers. All of these more sort of administrative roles, which aren't directly involved in research or are directly involved in clinical practice, but you can still draw on the skills that you gain within transformative oncology. And maybe it would be quite good in terms of professional skills development. Maybe I can kind of give a few ideas of what sort of skills you'll be taking with you. One of the key skills is professional communication. I mean, that's a huge advantage to anybody in the field of oncology, and we really encourage that and develop that through both written and verbal forms. Coordinating with others is a really key factor, and digital capability. I mean, now we're in the 21st century. We've had two years or maybe a little bit longer of using, a sort of platform interface, a computer, a Zoom, virtual conferences, all that sort of thing. And my feeling is that a certain aspect of that will stay in our new normal, however that becomes, because, it cuts down on travel, it makes things more flexible. The beauty of having recorded content, of course, is that our learners can go back and revisit and re-revise. If they've forgotten something, or if they want to go back to it, you can refresh that memory at any point in the course of the unit. I would say critical thinking is something that we also encourage. So it's a skill that we are helping to develop really in our students as we go through the programme. And actually something again that's quite overlooked, but creativity. It always surprised me how creatively you have to think when you're sort of addressing, I don't know, a scientific conundrum, you know, you've got a result in the lab and you're trying to work it out, you're trying to troubleshoot, you have to think very creatively. So actually, you know, mixing together some of those clinical judgments or those clinical observations with the scientific explanations, etc., you kind of have to think a little bit out of the box sometimes. So yeah, bringing in that creativity. Judgment and decision making is another area which you can evidence through how we've set up the assessments and the learning within this program. And these are really transferable skills. So these aren't just knowledge, they're not just, oh, I understand, you know, what cancer is and I understand what treatments are and that sort of thing, but these are more transferable skills. Time management, team working, all of those, you know, what might be considered soft skills are actually the ones that will set you up for your next role, whatever that might be.
Yeah, and that's absolutely brilliant. And thanks for kind of explaining that in more detail. And I know that a lot of people, they kind of look, and I know it's very, very early to be thinking about things like the research project. But I was just wondering if you could just explain a little bit more about the two different options that are available there for people, depending on their situation and their circumstances, to be able to complete the full MSc.
Sure. So one of the ways that we've set up this program is to connect some of our learners with potential research supervisors in the future. So for example, you could do the 2 years online, but you might think, actually, for my research project, I'm going to go to Manchester and I'm going to, you know, I want to target that particular group. I have a real interest in proton therapy, or a real interest in immunotherapy, or early detection strategies, or something like that. So by connecting with some of our unit leads and some of our content creators on the program, those possibilities become a reality, really. So if you have a very specific area of interest, it's entirely possible for you to set up a research project within a lab that is relevant to that. The other option, which is the research skills in practice, so this is formatted in, it's a 60 credit unit, so it's the same amount that you would need to go from a PG Dip to a master's. And it's really all about those research skills that are, again, transferable. It's contextualized for oncology, but it's the underlying skills. So it's things like formulating a research question, communicating your research, designing a study methodology. You know, these are transferable skills that you learn. Responsibilities as a researcher, you know, that bringing in things like ethics and consenting and those sorts of things. Really importantly, and something we build on a lot throughout the program, communicating your research in a number of different ways, in a number of different formats. And the other really important bit, actually, which I think we underestimate, is the ability to reflect. The ability to reflect on your own learning, and the ability to reflect on what you've seen, what you understand, to enable you to decide where you want to go next, or where that information fits in where you're trying to get to, if that makes sense. So yeah, that reflective portfolio that we create as part of our assessments, and that reflective practice is built into that research skills in practice module.
Okay, that's absolutely great. Thank you very much, Suze. And I guess the next question is, what kind of tips and advice do you have to learners for making the most out of their time studying this course?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think, you know, I think being disciplined is quite an important skill for all of us to have. It's something that we've all been tested by over the last couple of years, with our, you know, our worlds being turned upside down and not being able to function normally. So again, time management and those sorts of things are quite important, but focus as well, focus, discipline. So, and the way that the program is formatted and the way that the units are structured, hopefully will enable the students not to fall behind, because we are, whilst we're not synchronous and they don't have to be at a particular place at a particular time, the learning that's delivered over each week, and it's set out in a weekly basis, then really sort of informs the discussion and creates that community of practice that we're discussing. So actually you really want to keep up with it. You really want to be, you know, the person who's asking that question, because the earlier you engage with it, the more of a rich experience you're going to get from your peers and also from the academic staff, because although we're not here teaching face to face, we are here in the background and we're watching all the discussion boards and we're contributing to this. So if anyone has a specific question or a particular area of interest, let us know, and we can find an expert, or we can, get that expert opinion for someone, or we can explore that particular question.
Yeah, and actually, I'd just kind of like to just build on this with you saying about making sure you ask questions and things like that as well, and really engaging with the course. It's something that I know I hear from a lot of course directors or other academics who are teaching on programs, is people sometimes don't ask enough questions, would you say? And it really isn't a problem to ask questions and to gain a deeper understanding.
Yeah, absolutely, because at the end of the day, we want to learn too, right? So we want to learn what our students want to learn, if that sounds a bit odd, but feedback from students is what will help us to develop and improve the way that we're delivering our teaching, the topics that we're focusing on. If there's things that's missing, if there's extra stuff that people want to know about, then we can add that in. We are flexible enough to enable that additional learning and that deeper learning in those particular subject areas, if that's what our students want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm now going to just take this question. I'm just going to sort of readdress it slightly to something that I've been asked a lot, which is if there's any tips or advice for someone who's perhaps not got English as their first language and for learning in their second language. Do you have any particular tips or advice for them in particular?
So this is not my area of expertise, is the first thing I'm going to say. And obviously, something like oncology, it's a technical language. So there are going to be situations where you might find that it's difficult to understand. We can signpost you to lots of different resources through the university library. And it might be worth you. So part of the what we're trying to do with the students is to encourage them to start a glossary at the very beginning, and for all of our students to contribute to that. And that is the technical language, really. So actually, by embellishing some of that with some more descriptors, which makes more sense in non-English language, would be really nice. Actually, it would be nice to see that, and nice to have that context from some of our students. So I would say, don't be afraid. Google Translate can do a lot, can't do everything. We have a really broad demographic of researchers and clinicians who work in Manchester. So if we really got stuck, the chances are we would be likely to find someone who can help you and do that little bit of additional coaching if that's needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, one of the things I've certainly heard, and I think one of the best bits of advice that I've ever heard was from a current student with this question, and she said sometimes it might be a new term in English that you might not be familiar with in your native language. And so just using Google Translate might not actually explain what that means to you. And it very much was along the same lines as you were saying with the glossary, and it's looking up synonyms, looking up words that mean similar that can help bring that context to it. But it's also really, really great, and really great reminder as well that the University of Manchester is really, really proud of its kind of global reach and the number of researchers and PhD students, and generally students both on campus and online, who are from across the globe as well. So there is that very ready network there to tap into and to ask if you need further support. And it's something, again, just don't suffer in silence. Just make sure that you are asking if you do need that further help. Okay, so the next question that I have, the next question I guess that I have on here is, we'll start sort of thinking a little bit more about kind of how to apply for the course, some of the questions that come up as part of that. So one of the questions that we get relating to applying is, when we say in our entry requirements a subject that's allied to medicine, are you able to explain a little bit more about sort of what that means, Suze?
Yeah, sure. So it's a phrase that we use quite a lot actually in sort of translational research or within cancer, because there are an awful lot of professions which aren't strictly clinical, or they're not strictly research, not strictly scientific, but they form all of the important roles within a multidisciplinary team. Or when you're looking to consider a patient with cancer, you look at it from lots of different angles. You look at that particular case from lots of different angles. So it might be a nutritionist, it might be a physiotherapist, it might be a surgeon, it might be a program manager, somebody who's worked in that area and, you know, been the person that's sort of bringing grant applications together and has that a bit of scientific background but isn't working in research anymore. It might be lab managers, it might be pharmacologists or people that prescribe cancer drugs, you know, through their sort of pharmacy in a hospital or something like that, but they want to know a little bit more about the background and the mechanistic understanding of those drugs. There's a whole range of different job roles that we would consider to be allied healthcare professionals.
Yeah, no, and that's really helpful, and thanks for explaining that in a little bit more detail, Suze. So I think that's one of the, again, that we've drawn on it a few times. It's really does, this course is really relevant to such a broad range of people, and there's so many things that can be relevant and that you will be able to gain and to learn from this program to give yourself a much broader understanding of the area of oncology and of all the different things that are taking place and all the exciting innovation that's taking place as well. So again, kind of thinking on the for people who are submitting an application, what kind of things are you looking for in an application form to really make someone's application stand out when you're reviewing it?
What I really like to see is a little bit of an idea of aspiration, I suppose. You know, where obviously on the CV that you've got your background, we'll understand what your qualifications are. So for the first part, having some kind of biology understanding or some kind of, you know, sort of clinical role or that sort of thing is quite important. Because this program hits the ground running. We don't go back to the cancer biology 101. We go straight into, why is it important to understand tumour heterogeneity? You know, we go from the standing point of, this is what we know now, and this is why we need to understand it better. And this is why, by understanding it better, we can help the patient with cancer. So yeah, so in the sort of personal statements, what I quite like to read is somebody's viewpoints and somebody's aspirations and somebody's motivation. Because for us, we want to see students who are going to engage, who are interested in learning. They want to take their learning perhaps into their own community or into their own healthcare setting, and really put the skills that they're learning through this program into practice. And it's you know, there's a bit of a learn while you earn sort of angle to this program because it's part-time. So it might be that, you know, somebody's doing takes on the PG Cert, for example, doing this for 12 months, they can integrate the things that they're learning directly into their practice, whatever that might be. So, you know, the skills that we talked about, all those sort of professional development skills that we talked about, they're very transferable. So, you know, understanding where where the learner is currently and where they want to come to, it will really help us to assess whether, you know, the eligibility for the program, whether this program is right for them, etc. You know, and whether we're right for them. You know, it works both ways. So yeah, something around aspiration is lovely to read.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we do give out sort of general advice anyway for things like the personal statement. You know, the aspiration is really, really important to us, understanding a bit more about you and why this course can make a huge difference to you. And we really want to kind of sort of encourage you to tell us about that as well, because it can really help sort of shape things as well whilst you're learning. If we know that there's people who are interested in a certain aspect of oncology, then the academic lead for the relevant unit can make sure that that's really clearly signposted and included as well, to make sure that you can get the most out of it. It's also, the personal statement's also just a really great place if there's something that you don't think's obvious enough, perhaps from your CV or when you're putting in your academic or professional background as well. It's also a really great place to highlight that as well. So I'd really encourage you to do that. And one other thing to just really make you aware of is that my role as a course advisor, I am here to help support you during that application process. So if you are unsure about writing the personal statement, you want me to look over your CV, then please do ask, and you can email studyonline@manchester.ac.uk and send a copy of those documents. I'll be more than happy to take a look over them and offer any advice about how you can make points clearer, or if I feel there's something missing that you need to include as well. So I really encourage you to use that resource and to come and ask these questions of me if you're thinking about it and you need any further help or support with that as well. So one of the things that we do get asked a lot is about how to apply for the course. Now that comes through, you apply online for the course, so please don't submit an application by email for the programme. You do need to use our online application portal, and you can navigate to that through the course webpage, which I'll put a link to in the chat now for you. And there's a button on there that says apply now. That takes you through to a form that you need to just fill in, and that will then take you through to our application portal. And on the application portal, you need to create an account and work your way through step by step. And the application portal is really, really clear at making sure that you have to have completed all of the information in each section before you then submit your application. All of the details about supporting documents, things that you need to include alongside your application, are also available on the course webpage. And the other thing that we have is that we do have on our YouTube channel a large number of videos that are available for you to watch, and that is included a walkthrough of the application portal, showing you how that looks and giving you advice about what you need to include as part of that. So if you are working through it and you're getting a little bit stuck, it's a great place to start to see if that's covered in that YouTube video and in that walkthrough. Again, if you are getting stuck and you're really not sure on something, you can email me and send a screenshot of the error that you're perhaps receiving, the thing that you're not sure about, and we can look at it with you and kind of troubleshoot that and see if there's something initially that perhaps you're missing, or if not, then we can investigate it further for you. So please don't be put off by anything like that, and please do ask if you need it. So we're beginning to get towards the end of the questions that we've got to cover that have sort of been submitted in advance. So if anybody else does have anything that they want to ask us, please do start submitting those questions now. I can see that we've got one here actually as well, which is about financial aid or scholarships. So in terms of financial aid and scholarships, it really does depend on where you're applying from as to what's going to be available, and that can really, it varies where you are in the world. So in terms of scholarships, unfortunately at the moment we don't have any scholarships available for the programme, but I know that a lot of employers, if you're looking for perhaps employer support, we can help with that if there's things that you need to help you sort of strengthen an application to your employer for support. You can also look at things like, if you're UK based, you can look at things like the postgraduate student loans that might be available. And the other advice that I have is to check out opportunities wherever you are in the world with kind of your local and national governments too, and seeing if there's any opportunities there for career development, for scholarships to help you carry on with further study. And those are the main options. We do also offer the opportunity to pay by instalments, so you don't necessarily have to have the full course fee available at the start of your studies, and there is the option to spread the cost of that out throughout your studies to make it more affordable and to break it down into more manageable chunks. And again, if you want any further details about that, if you send me an email afterwards to studyonline@manchester.ac.uk, I'll be happy to send you links to further details about that paying by instalments option. Suze, are you aware of any other funders?
Unfortunately not at the moment, no. The landscape is difficult, right, at the moment, and I think that's globally accepted, unfortunately. But yeah, if there is any option available, then it's something that we would put on the website straight away, absolutely, and signpost potential students for. The other thing I would say actually is that, you know, if you're not in a position to commit to the master's degree and it's something that you're interested in doing or you might want to do in the future, or even if you just want to dip your toe in and just do the 1 year, you know, take the 4 units, get the 60 credits, do the PG Cert. So do that to start with. You can always come back later and then, you know, move that forwards to a PG, a postgraduate diploma, or then a master's degree. So we do offer that flexibility if you want to come and just do the PG Cert first.
Yeah, and I would encourage people, if you aren't sure as well, you know, you do also almost want to try the PG Cert first. You can apply directly for the PG Cert and decide whether that course is right for you. It doesn't necessarily have to be sort of about the funding and about the money. If you just decided that actually I want to do a bit of this course first before I change on to either the postgraduate diploma or the master's, then that's a very valid and viable option. And we do have the flexibility for you to swap between those 3 options during your studies, as well.
I would add to that, you know, in some people's circumstances, a postgraduate certificate is more than enough evidence that you're looking to advance your career or looking to advance your learning in a specific area. So don't be put off by it not being a full master's. I think it's still an extremely valid qualification to have. And what it will offer on transformative oncology is that you really get those first 4 units. So you get that, you know, understanding of tumour heterogeneity and the biology and the clinical impacts of that. You get an understanding of toxicity, an understanding of genetic diversity and how that can impact on treatment or even cancer risk. You also get the 4th unit, which is around the branches of oncology. So this brings in surgical oncology, clinical oncology, and medical oncology. So these 3 different disciplines which are, you know, woven into oncology as a whole, which offer these different treatment options for patients. So within the PG Cert, actually, you get a really nice, broad and holistic understanding of the field of oncology as it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously we're running today's session as part of a sort of broader virtual insight day to give everyone an insight into the course. And we will have further sessions this afternoon giving an overview of units 2, 3 and 4, all of the ones that build up the postgraduate certificate. So if you can stick around and you want to come and join us for the rest of those sessions, then you're very, very welcome to. But also all of this will be available on our YouTube channel to watch back on demand, and as you are working through and as you're ready and you have more time to sort of sit and digest this information too. So please do take advantage of that and use these resources that we have available to you as well. So I mean, we're sort of wrapping up the live questions now. I guess I've just got a couple more to wrap up the session today. So one of my questions for you, Suze, is just what is it that you're most excited about this course?
I'm excited to listen in to some of the discussions from the global campus and our learners, actually, you know, to have those responses, to understand that reflection that people are having. Yeah, just to see it all fly, to be honest. You know, it's been a couple of years in the development stage, so I think it's a really exciting program. I think it's completely unlike anything else on the market available at the moment. I think, you know, we are capitalizing on the online learning environment, and we are using all the tricks that we've learned over the last, not just over the last couple of years, being forced to put lectures on Zoom and things like that, but actually all of the development that we have at the University of Manchester in terms of online learning, we've brought all of that into play. The other thing, and this is a surprise to me, we've got all this, you know, 45 minutes into this webinar, nobody's mentioned assessment. I thought that would be the first thing that somebody would go and say, how do we get assessed? But, you know, it's important to say that the other part of the learning that we've been able to bring into this program is how important it is to be inclusive. So, for example, you know, the way that each of the units is assessed, we do it in 3 sections. So we have one section which is multiple choice questions, and these, you know, throughout the 2 weeks, throughout these 5 credit elements, which are over 2 weeks, we have formative knowledge checks throughout. So you can really tell if you're keeping up with the understanding, or you're very aware that there's anything that you're not quite understanding, and you can go back and revisit. And then we have the MCQ that happens in week 8. We also have the reflective portfolio, And this is around, you know, each learner being encouraged to compile a record of their learning. And this is something that they can then take with them into whatever future career they have, to continually to reflect on and continue to build their knowledge and understanding. And it's really about capturing those, almost those moments or those light bulb moments where you suddenly realize, oh, that's why it works that way, or that's why it happens. You know, encouraging people to take notice of that, those moments, that's fantastic. Another thing I'm looking forward to, actually. And we really encourage that regular reflection throughout the programme, so that it might be reflecting on their own learning, it might be reflecting on something that they've read in the discussion board, you know, an opinion or a viewpoint or an insight from somebody else in the programme, and really building that sort of community of practice. You know, it's a skill that scientists and clinicians use within their working worlds. It's really important to take that step to breathe and go, right, so what did we see? What does it mean? How does it relate? Where do we go next? What's the next question? You know, so having that continual sort of reflective practice is really important. And then the final part of the assessment for each of the units, and each of the units has the same template, so you'll be very familiar with it as you work through. The final section is around comprehension. And this is where inclusive assessments really comes into play, because we are giving the learners the opportunity to decide what format they want to use in order to demonstrate their understanding and their knowledge. So they can do a presentation, it can be a podcast or an audio presentation, or it can be in a written format. So depending on where your skill sets are, depending on what you're comfortable with, depending on how you want to portray your understanding and your knowledge, so that we can assess that, then that's over to the learner. And that actually is something I'm really proud of with this programme, is that we've been able to incorporate that, really, you know, that understanding of how important it is to give people options in order to be assessed on their learning. So
yeah, no, and that's brilliant. And I guess as well, the other thing is, if you do want to see more about the assessments, each of the unit overview sessions will provide that summary as well. But if you do need any more detail, or the answer you've just given is really detailed, and thank you, Suze, for just touching on that and going into that as well, then you can also ask, and please don't be shy about getting in contact. So the final question that I've got for you then, Suze, is what would you say to someone who's thinking about applying but hasn't quite done it yet?
Oh, what's stopping you? This programme is absolutely, it's the cutting edge, it's innovative, it's different, it's informative, it's relevant, I'm very excited about it. It's everything that, so okay, when I'm writing it, or when I've been writing it, when I've been talking to my clinical experts, my colleagues and my researchers, I'm constantly going, oh, I'd really like to learn that. Like I'm writing it. So that tells me that it's engaging and that it's relevant to now, and it's the information that we need the world to know. We need the world to be focusing on this interface between medicine and science, and transformative oncology is the only place that you can get that specific piece of information, that knowledge and that exploration. So yeah, click the button. I'd love to see you in September.
Yeah, no, and thank you so much for that great summary as well there, Suze. So I'm just going to put up a slide now which just summarises my contact details for everyone. So if you do have any further questions that you want to ask us after today's session, then you can get in touch with me via study online at manchester.ac.uk, and we also have my phone number there as well if there is anything further that you want to ask or that you want to check. We will be running further sessions throughout the rest of today as well, giving you the overall insight and overview to units 2, 3 and 4, which is the cancer is an individualized disease, established and experimental techniques, and the branches of oncology as well. So if you want to join us for any of those further sessions, you can either keep yourself logged in right now, or you can just use the link that you've used to join today's webinar and come back and leave the session for now and come back at those times as well. So that's at 2 o'clock, 2:15 and 2:30. But that kind of really brings us to the end of today's session. So thank you, Suze, for joining us today and for answering some of the frequently asked questions that we get on the programme. We hope to hear from you and hopefully for you to be joining us this September as well. So thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thanks everyone. Take care.